How's it going, guys? Hope all are doing, and welcome to a brand new video tutorial from Untitled. Today we've got a new video tutorial about how you can take your Nodejs server application and deploy it to the cloud. And what I mean by the cloud is actually a server you buy or like a hosting you get online, so you can deploy your server to. And we're just going to go ahead and walk through step by step how you can do this process for a Node.js application. It's not going to be only applicable for Node.js applications, because any other server application using PHP, Go, any other language able to create server-side applications, you can easily use this guide as a management, but it's going to be more specifically for a Node.js application. So for that, we're going to be using the great hosting provider Hostinger, and we're going to grab a VPS hosting in here. So clearly see at hostinger.com, and it's pretty affordable, pretty great, and it's one of the many awesome like hosting companies that you can grab a VPS hosting from. So it's pretty great, actually. You can go and grab it from. And by the way, it's actually the sponsor of today, so it's actually sponsoring this video tutorial. So this video tutorial has been brought by Hostinger to you guys. So yeah, make sure to go and check out for a really affordable and great and faster VPS. So here what I'm going to choose, you can choose like from a list of available like detailed VPS depending on what you need actually, and depending on your budget. But for like an affordable one, so I'm going to just grab the 1 GB on 2 GB of storage, 1 virtual CPU, and I'm just going to press to add to cart. So just pressing add to cart in here, going to give you a lot of other options. You can choose like the duration or how many like months you want to grab or host that. So you can grab 48 months for like an affordable price. You can choose like many other add-ons, like you can grab like a secure daily backups, or I don't know, something like can add it in if you really want to get it, or you can get like first secure help. So it depends on that. So you can go and choose it, and you can just go and check out this, grab it, and there you go. So I'm going to be using a VPS hosting. And why specifically a VPS hosting and not a shared hosting or any other different type of hosting? Because a VPS, it gives you like a bare minimum VPS server, just like you have your server installed on that, and you got like a Linux distribution installed with. You can choose from many different types of Linux distributions depending on what you need and what is exactly the best choice for you to deploy your server to. For example, we're going to be using Ubuntu 18.04 for this video tutorial. So this is basically what it is, and you can just go and grab that. You can install a different type of like libraries, and install different type of like servers like Nginx, or type of databases like MySQL or MongoDB, and you can set it up from the ground down. You can grab it, you can install whatever you want on it, and you can just gonna put your server on that. So it's fully customizable, fully manageable. You have got the root access, and you can do whatever you want with the server. So here I already bought that, and I already grabbed everything. I already actually did all of the things that I need behind the scenes in here. So this is what you get after pretty much getting into the server and actually accessing the cPanel. So you get your server name from there. You can get like a running process or the running status right over here. You get some like details, SSH details, and for the SSH details specifically, you will be using them for accessing your server remotely from your computer. In here, in this particular tutorial, I'm using actually Ubuntu in my own operating system on my own computer. You can use Windows or Mac OS X. That doesn't really mean anything, because the remote server is going to be always a Linux distribution, and you can just go and grab it, because firstly when you set it up, it's going to just tell you or ask you about which operating system or which Linux distribution you want to choose. So you can choose from a variety of different of Linux distributions depending on what you need, but you can just go and grab as I did, because you want to follow up the video tutorial, and that actually depends on one. Each one has like a slightly differences from the other, so you need to choose that carefully. And what I chose, like in here, is clearly see Ubuntu 18.04 for the 64 bits. So make sure to do that, and you can just gonna give it like a host name, and make sure if you want to change this later, everything's gonna be destroyed. All of your data is gonna be destroyed. Now, this is basically what you need. You need your like SSH details in order to access the server. Now here, if you also want like to upgrade the server, you can easily go in and upgrade it, or you can renew that, and it tells you where it actually, or when pretty much it will expire, so you can easily renew it to a new date and so on and so forth. So you want to access it using the SSH tunnel. You open up a tunnel and using the root, of course, because it has like a sudo access or a root access. And if you're on Windows, you can probably use like a git bash, or you can use cmd if you've got the SSH installed, or much more preferably, you can go and grab PuTTY. So PuTTY is actually a client for Windows. It is a graphical using client that gonna give you a terminal. You can actually use it and access throughout SSH, and it has like a 32-bit version and a 64-bit version, so it actually depends on what you need. You can grab this for Windows, but for Linux, what I simply need to do is just like fire up my Screws in here, fire my terminal, and you can get right up into it. So I'm gonna do SSH, and you can clearly go and grab or this IP, so make sure to copy it. I'm gonna say SSH, and make sure to type in the root, and here you can simply just paste in the IP address of your server. Of course, if you want to like deploy a real world application where you have got like you need your users to access it, you need to buy a completely custom domain for you, and you link it throughout this with the DNS option. So you can grab this DNS option from here, you can select it, you can put the domain name, and it's going to take effect in like 24 hours maximum. So here, just press enter. You're gonna ask you for the password. If you really want to change the password, because it has like a password already pre-assigned to it, so make sure you're gonna put the new password in here and repeat the passwords. Just save the changes, and the password is gonna take place as a new one. So I already made this password. So make sure to just put your password in here, and here it gonna gives you like a startup information about what is being used, the documentation if you need any help, and the last login from each user, and of course the IP address. So actually for security concerns and stuff, this is exactly what's going to happen, and this is exactly what it's going to tell you. So here we got into the server. Now we are actually inside of the server, inside of the Ubuntu 18.04 server in here, and it is running up Ubuntu. Of course, we are actually accessing it throughout the root, because we only have root access right now. You can create like a completely different user, but it also depends on that. So first things first, you need to think about when you get a server, what you have to think about is, of course, I've got my application, or I've got my Node.js application server. You need to think about what I'm using, of course. So since I'm a Node.js application, here I've got a simple application or simple RESTful API / GraphQL API that is running on my Node.js application. And this GraphQL API actually is built on top of the Node.js Express framework, and on top of that, it also uses a framework called Nest.js. So Nest.js is actually a framework that allows you to work with Node.js underneath the hood with also Express support, and you can easily run or create your servers really easy with RESTful API support and GraphQL with a really cool framework with dependency injection and everything else. So I'm going to be deploying this application. Of course, you've got to need to your application. You can just grab a simple Express application and you can start working with it. And here, just to show you that it's actually running, here it listens on the 3,000 ports. So make sure just put that away, and just to know where your application is going to be starting on which port, and of course it's going to be starting on the local host. So this is basically for the application we're going to be deploying. So for this application, what I'm using SQLize, which means I will be using MySQL. So first we need to think about installing MySQL on the VPS server. So we just need to head back into the VPS server here and make sure to run first sudo apt updates. So, and of course, since we are already on roots, we don't really need to run sudo, but most of the guys or most of you will need to. So just type in sudo in there. Now here we need to go in and install it. We just did the update, so we're going to just put sudo apt install, and I'm going to put MySQL server. Here you're going to ask you if you really want to install this. It's going to take 162 megabytes. I'm going to type in yes, and it's going to take a little bit of time, just not that much of time, because the actual VPS server we got in here is already linked to high-end like internet connection, so with like 100 megs down and I don't know 50 megs up or something like this. So it's super fast and super reliable. It's clear in here. It does everything in as quick as possible. So you just need to wait for a little bit for the installation to goes on. And for the MySQL installation, we're going to be installing the server. We're also going to be securing it. So we're just going to get into a shell, and we're going to just start putting some like commands for securing that to make it look much better. So let's just wait for this a little bit of time to finish up. And there we go. Now installation has been done successfully. They're just going to try to set up a secure configuration for our MySQL database. Now we got the MySQL database. If you just type in MySQL D for the daemon and just type in like version, and it's going to get you that. So here you see MySQL version 5.7.26 at Ubuntu, and for Linux, of course, x86. So we got everything is working. Now we're just gonna try to do like a specific secure connection or configuration for MySQL, because we are going to be deploying this to a server. So I'm going to do MySQL secure installation, and this script is going to be automatically deployed after the installation of MySQL D. You're going to get this script on your binary. So just try and run the script in here, and make sure to add a sudo if you really need to. You're going to get a prompt, like a set of questions asking you like how to set up things. So if you want to firstly enable the validate password plugin that can be used to test passwords. So depending on that, when you type in or you try to change the root password, this plugin is going to run and it tests if the password is actually strong enough to be set as a root password or not. So I'm going to enable this. I'm just going to type in yes, and of course you're going to say like which variants you want, like a low, medium, or strong, and for most cases medium is going to just do the job perfectly for us. So which means Linux is more than 8. We got numeric, mixed case, and special case characters. So here we got that, and we actually need to just type in 1 and 2. Pretty good. Now we need to set up the password for the actual root user on the database. Now for the password in here, I'm going to set up just a simple password, and I'm going to re-enter the password, of course. There you go. Now the estimated string of the password is actually 100%. Do you wish to continue or not? Yes, we do. So it actually depends on that. Now what it tells you, if you want to really remove anonymous users, these anonymous users are actually used for testing purposes only. So if you like vision on deployments and production ready application or server side environment application, of course you need to remove the anonymous users. So just type in yes. Here you want to disallow the root login remotely. Of course we do, because we don't want any like remote root access injections or brute forcing or anything like that, just to secure the server. Now just type in rest, remove the test database. Of course do remove the test database, and reload the privileges tables now. So if you really want to reload it, you're gonna just, if you have any sessions associated to the daemon server, you're gonna be like taken out of it. So I'm just gonna say yes, and all done. Now everything has been successfully done. All the configuration has been successfully taken care of. You don't really need to do anything. Now just another step, just for testing purposes, to make sure that everything is working pretty much fine. And for this one, we can just type in okay, we can go just sudo service, and we can just go MySQL D status. So the actual service doesn't exist in this. Okay, we need to install it. So we can do like system control and MySQL D status. So we can just type in status first and MySQL D. Okay, the syntax really matters in here, and MySQL D doesn't exist. We can just type in MySQL, and there you go. So now here, just to check out the actual current status for MySQL server, if they're running or not, and it's currently running MySQL community server, and it's currently active or running and everything. So just type in Q for exits, and there you go. Now just gonna clear everything out, and you're just gonna try to access the database. Just type in MySQL in here. It tries to access that, and there you go. So you can easily access this. And of course, here you got your databases. You can just do show databases. And there you go, you got all of your database. You got MySQL, system, performance, and just like a pre-built in databases. Now you got MySQL set up and everything, and it's completely like working, everything fine. So we can just gonna get into the actual next step. Now for the next step, what we need is basically go ahead and set up Nginx. What I'm gonna be using Nginx for, Nginx is actually a reverse proxy. So if you try to go and Google out things like Nginx, or what is Nginx if you're not familiar with Nginx. So what is Nginx? So Nginx is basically a web server which can also be used as a reverse proxy, load balancer, or a mail proxy in an HTTP cache. So it works like both ways, and a lot of features on Nginx. Nginx is very, very reliable, and of course I think open source, so, and it's written in C, so it is very performance friendly. And we're just gonna simply be using it in a reverse proxy situation. What I mean by reverse proxy is basically where you're gonna be like receiving a request on Nginx, and Nginx, the actual Nginx server that is running, is on port 80, which is available on the outside firewall. So everyone in the internet can access the A port, which is Nginx is listening for requests on. So Nginx is gonna capture this HTTP request, and it's going to forward it back internally inside of the server. There's a local host running, which is representing our Node.js server. So this Node.js server is going to receive this request from Nginx. So this is basically what a reverse proxy is, and more specifically it's called an internal reverse proxy. Pretty great. So I'm going to be using Nginx for this side, and I'm going to use the actual terminal. So for first install Nginx, we'll always make sure to do sudo apt and update. So just to make sure that all the packages are updates and all the apt remote URLs are up to date, and everything is pretty great. Now we run sudo apt, and of course we need to install Nginx. So in the apt package, we need to choose yes. It has actually an specific package for Debian distributions, which is in this case Ubuntu is a Debian distribution. Now we need to adjust the firewall, because Nginx is gonna play a role on listening for HTTP requests on the physical layer, or pretty much on the network layer. So for the network layer, what's gonna happen is Nginx is gonna be listening for requests on port 80, and port 80 is basically what the most or World Wide Web, the www, is actually uses by default to send HTTP requests, or pretty much the browser uses by default to send HTTP requests and back and forth. So we need to go ahead and use the UWF, or Unified Firewall, to add the Nginx to the firewall. So I'm just going to do sudo UFW and uplist here, just to list everything up. And as you can see, we haven't got UFW installed or anything, so we need to make sure firstly install this firewall, and we can just go back into adding Nginx into the firewall actually. So for an uncomplicated firewall, or UFW, you're just going to do sudo apt and install UFW. So here we just need to wait for it a little bit to install and finish up everything. Now we need to just go ahead and make sure to by default allow the SSH connection, otherwise we won't be able to access SSH. So we can do UFW uplist to see all the available applications. There's Apache, there's Nginx, which pretty much acquires a firewall permission to access the actual ports, and there's Nginx, there's OpenSSH, and we need to grant OpenSSH to work on the firewall that we have newly installed. Otherwise you won't be able to make a new connection to your remote server and you lose all your data. So just do UFW and allow SSH. So now new rules have been updated to the version 6 and the version 4 of IP. And the next thing, you can just gonna allow a custom port or anything. What we want to allow specifically is actually the HTTP or port 80. So you can just type in port 80 or HTTP, doesn't really matter. So just type in that. We got new rules has been updated, and you can also do SSA or SSL more specifically on port 443, but that doesn't really matter that much. Now let's just go back into our work for initializing Nginx and working with it perfectly. So as clear as in here, we already did UFW. If you don't have it, make sure to do it first, otherwise it won't work. Now we're gonna get the list, and here we got Nginx full, so we can do UFW uplist. Again, we're gonna get Apache. We don't care about that. So we got Nginx full, Nginx HTTP, and HTTPS. So the full is gonna be enabling both HTTP and HTTPS simultaneously, But here we need to separately enable one because we are only going to be using HTTP, not HTTPS though. So if you need HTTPS, you can easily use the firewall, of course, to allow the incoming requests on that. So I'm going to do sudo ufw, and I'm going to do allow, so nginx HTTP, and make sure to type in the same identical name in here between quotations, otherwise it won't recognize that. So just type in this, the rules are going to be updated, and you can do like ufw status. So the status is actually inactive, as clear as in here, so we haven't activated that anyway. So you can easily go ahead and do, or make sure to activate the ufw, otherwise it won't work. So we can do system control, and we can just type in enable and ufw. So it clears here, we got enable here, and if we just try to do status again, right now actually it's fully loaded, but it's not activated whatsoever. And lastly, make sure to activate the firewall, otherwise it won't work. So just do ufw and enable. So existing station connection, proceed with the operation. So yes, it's clear in here, it tells you the SSH connection might goes off. Now the firewall is actually active and enabled on system startup. So once your system is booted up or rebooted, you are going to get the firewall start up automatically on the system reboots. So that's pretty great. You can just go and check out the status once again, and you can do system control. So system control, gonna put status, and I'm gonna put ufw. It's clear in here, still not fully working, but the ufw is actually currently working. So we can just type in the status. Clear here, we got active, and we got everything. So 22 for the TCP, 22 is actually an SSH port, and Nginx HTTP, 80 ports and 22 port on the IPv6, and as well the HTTP on IPv6. So both IPv4 and IPv6 are completely supported on that. Now we got Nginx is pretty actually running, and everything is working pretty much fine. Now you can go ahead and check out your web server, and of course we already did that. It's currently running, so you can just do system control status and Nginx. So system control, yeah, my bad in here. Now we got the Nginx servers actually active, completely loaded. So for enabling Nginx or starting Nginx on the this VPS server, we got a couple of issues because Apache is actually already installed. So it's already taking the process or listening on the 80 port. So that's quite a problem. We need to first go ahead and disable Apache because we're not going to be using Apache whatsoever, and enable Nginx instead of it. So to disable an Apache, make sure to use sudo, access the configuration inside of etc init d, and we're going to access Apache 2 and make sure to run the stop command on it. So this one is going to just stop in, as clear see, okay, stopping Apache 2.servers, and we can simply just go and do like system control, and we can do start Nginx, and of course that's we're not going to get the error or something. Everything's going to be started successfully. Clear up everything. We can do system control again, we can do status, and of course we're going to do the status of Nginx, and there we go. We got the status active, is currently running, and everything's working pretty much fine, and Nginx now is currently working. So we got Nginx working, we got the database installed and everything, but we haven't tested Nginx yet, so we need to run some couple of tests to make sure that Nginx is actually running, and we can get a web page displayed on the web server. So we can just gonna do a simple configuration and display or show up an index.html web page, just a simple hello world web page to make sure that Nginx is working and the reverse proxy is working pretty much fine. Now we simply need to make sure that Apache 2 is completely uninstalled from our server, since of course we're going to be using Nginx as our web server, so we need to make sure that one single web server exists on the actual server, or at least as one is actually running at the server runtime, and not both, because it's going to be having like an issue making requests and stuff, and which one is going to be handling this request on the server side. So for doing that, we need to go and run the command, so sudo apt get and remove. In order to remove that, I'm just going to be removing Apache. Now, for like most VPS servers that comes installed with Ubuntu, you got Apache 2 is already pre-installed by default on the VPS server or on the server itself. So just go ahead and run this command in order to completely uninstall it and remove all of its sub packages from the actual server itself. So just run this, everything is going to be removed, and you know, everything is going to be done that, and it's going to be working pretty much fine. Now we got Nginx, we need to go ahead and test it and make sure that we get like a simple web page or a simple hello world web page get displayed once we enter our URL. So this URL is going to have like this IP address. So once you access the IP address, we need to see like a home page. And of course, as I've said, this is actually your server's IP address. You need to assign it into a domain for making like a real production ready websites, or like, you know, a platform or anything like this, or web application for making this web server perfectly. Or you can just leave it an IP address if you just want to like work with it internally and use as your APIs. So this is basically what it is and how it works. Now for setting up Nginx, we already installed Nginx and everything, and we just go ahead and do like some configuration. So inside of the configuration, or for Nginx configuration, the configuration actually lives inside of the etc /Nginx. But first things first, we need to go ahead and start by making like a simple HTML directory where we're going to put our index.html, which is going to be just for testing purposes. So I'm going to run sudo. Of course, since we are already root, we don't really need to run sudo or something, so we're just going to do like make directory. I'm going to use the p for making all the subdirectories. So I'm going to just put var and www. So this is actually by default the home where all of your web pages are going to be existing, and you can just give it like a server name or something like this. And of course, most of the times you would use your domain name in here, or you can use your server name. So just going to put server name, for example, .com, and of course I'm going to put an HTML directory. So it's going to be creating everything here if it's missing or anything. So everything's going to be created right over here, and it should actually work perfectly. Now what we need also to do is actually change permissions. So we can skip sudo, of course. We can just go and use shown and use recursive. And I'm going to put like everything is going to be used as user and user, which is currently the current user, which we are actually currently running as root. And most of the times running as root isn't really great, so you just need to create like another completely different user, and you can like run root like commands using the sudo command, because it's going to be much safer and much easier to work with and manipulate. So I'm going to just put variable, and I'm going to put www. I'm going to put the same thing, so server name .com, and I'm going to put HTML. Here we're going to just change the permission to actually assign it to the current user, which is currently root. The second thing, I'm going to change also the permissions for the actual folders. I'm going to put recursive again, and I'm going to put 755 for read, write, and for the actual directories. It's actually specifically made for directories. So it's actually the permission. I'm going to put www, and I'm going to put the server name .com. So why I'm maintaining these permissions and why I'm changing the actual group and the user owner of like changing the owner and changing the permission for both of these directories, because Nginx is going to be able to access directories, read the data from it, or read the actual web page and execute them on real time. So we need to make sure to provide it with the real permissions in order to work inside of your Linux environment. Otherwise, it gets like a deniable access to these directories, and it won't read or either write to it once it needs that. So this is perfectly really needed, as you might want to put that. So make sure to get the right permissions, or why they won't work. Most of the times putting 755 for directories is actually the pretty great idea for working with this one. So I'm just going to use change mode, and there you go. So now we change the mode and change the owner of that. Let's go and try to put like nano, and I'm going to put just a simple like test page. It's going to be index.html. So servername.com /HTML and I'm going to create something like index.html. So it's going to open up the nano editor in here. So actually nano is used for editing text. If you're not familiar with that, it's pretty much basically the same thing as Vim, but it's less complicated, less them, and it's much more simpler to use. So just like you can use nano for this kind of thing. It's nano. Alright, let's go and put some simple HTML web page, and I'm gonna just copy paste like a very simple HTML web page in here. If you're not familiar with that, you can check like how HTML basically operate. But this is actually basic one, has a header and a title, and welcome to like Nodejs server or something, and the server block is working, whatever. So you can just put Control X for existing, and it's gonna ask you if you really want to save these changes. Just output yes, and it's gonna like ask you the file name. Just click enter. You can have the same file name that you've outputted in here, and everything's gonna be pretty fine. Now we got the HTML. We got a very simple like HTML web page just for testing purposes, actually working. Now what we're gonna need to do, we need to go ahead into inside of the actual configuration of Nginx and configure it to go ahead by default once the user asks for this on the actual web server. So once the user access, for example, we got a domain name called mydomain.com, and once he just types mydomain.com, he clicks enter, he accesses this, we need to forward this request through Nginx to the right perfect location, otherwise it won't actually work. So we need to just make sure that is actually happening, and if you access IP address, it's going to be having the same, because a DNS or a domain name is going to be resolved using a DNS eventually to a normal IP address. So clearly seeing here an IP4 address. So this is basically what's going to happen behind the scenes. So I'm going to go ahead and clear out this, and I'm going to use nano again to put the configuration. So I'm going to go nano inside of etc Nginx, and this is where all of the Nginx configuration is going to be lived in. And I'm going to get access into the sites available directory. The sites available in here holds all the configuration for all of your websites. So if you've got like subdomains, other custom domains for this VPS or for this server actually running, you can just go ahead and put all of this configuration for here, for listening, for forwarding, for putting like reverse proxy and so on and so forth. Everything is going to be put it right over here. And I'm going to put, of course, put like configuration name servername.com, and actually like following this convention of naming it of like the actual name of your configuration or of your domain is going to just make it much easier for you later on to maintain this, debug it if there's any issues, or even like update and upgrade with it later on if you're just like going to come back this. So actually really useful to work with. Now we've got nano in here. We can just going to put some configuration, so we can start with the configuration, and I've got already a very simple configuration. I can just go and copy paste in here, so I really don't want to just go ahead and type everything out. I'm going to explain what is happening. So it's actually basic or by default configuration. We got the server rule, and for the server in here, I'm going to just open up curly braces and then close it. So here we need to first listen on 80 party, or the port 80, and of course we're going to need to listen on any local or any host and port 80. So it's actually kind of optional, so you can go and get rid of it, but most of the times it's better to leave it here. This root command or this root rule actually tells it what is the root directory of working with this, so where all of your web pages is going to be like served from. So roots in here, of course, we're just going to go like example.com, and of course we need to make sure to go ahead and change this into our server name, and do the same for you if you change the name like relevant server name. So I'm going to put just servername.com, the same thing I've put it inside of var www. And here, what is actually the 8 files that are going to be served by default. It starts with index, then it falls back into index.html, then index.htm, nginx define.html, and so on and so forth. So the type of like file extensions and file name that's going to be used by default to serve your web pages. Now we got that. Here actually the server name that's going to be served, and of course for the server name you would first need to put your domain, and of course for the domain you can have like whatever domain you got for your server. If you don't have a domain or anything, or if you really want to use your IP address, you can simply just go and go back in here. You can just grab this one and of course just paste the paste okay, just go back, so paste the actual IP address, and it's going to be used. And here for the location, for any location, and / means the root access of your website, and it's going to have like try files in the URI and URI. If it doesn't find that, it's just going to return a 404 HTML or status code at page not found. So this is basically what it is. It's super simple, and this is by default what Nginx serves as a configuration. So make sure to put that and change what it needs to be changed to yours in order for testing purposes. I'm just going to go ahead and click yes and save it the same name in here, and now we should actually work fine. But we got only the configuration inside of sites available, but the problem is we need to move it into sites enabled. So if you just go and do ls etc nginx, clearly seeing here, there's actually two things. There's the site available, so all of your sites are going to be here. And if you really enable a site or really want to make a site like active and make it enabled, you need to move it, or at least use a symbolic link like a shortcut, put it inside of the site available, otherwise it won't work. So we can just go ahead and do this in here. So I'm going to just do link, and I'm going to put the symbolic. I'm going to go inside of etc nginx and sites available. Alright, here just like a /, okay. So / sites available, and of course I'm going to be just going for servername.com, and for the servername.com in here, just going to be linking it to etc /nginx again, and sites enabled. So I'm just going to create like a shortcut from the sites available folder servername.com to the sites enabled. So click this, and so clearly in here it says that files exist because I already put that just for testing purposes, but it should work for you pretty much fine, and the shortcut should be created perfectly. Now you just need to go ahead and clear out this, and just one last thing, after you change your configuration, you need to make sure that you check it using Nginx, using the Nginx command -t, and it should says like the test has been successful and the configuration or nginx.conf syntax is okay. So if it says okay and everything is working pretty much fine, you should be looking forward to it. So pretty great, pretty good. We can just go and go back in here, and the last thing we need to make sure to do is actually, after changing or putting any configuration to Nginx, make sure to restart the server or restart Nginx server before doing anything. So I'm just going to do system control restart Nginx. There you go. And status. There you go. Now it's clear here we got some kind of should have put like Nginx, so status Nginx. As clear as Nginx is running and no issues or something. So pretty great, pretty cool. We're just going to go back. Now if we try to go ahead and access this IP address, which represents our website's IP address, or in your case your domain name, we get this message: so success, the example.com server is working, and we got the same title that I've set for the actual web page. We got welcome to Nodejs server. If you take a look at that, it's actually being served by Nginx, so it's pretty much working, and it is working as a reverse proxy. So, and of course the operating systems behind that is actually Ubuntu. Pretty cool, pretty cool. Now we got everything is working pretty much fine, and we got Nginx. So this is actually the steps for configuring Nginx, installing it, and making it like available on the firewall, and of course just making a simple test web page in order to make sure that your web reverse proxy is working perfectly, is listening on the correct 80 ports, and of course everything is around that is working perfectly. Now let's go and jump into working with Node.js and installing Node.js, of course, on our Ubuntu Linux server environments. Now for installing a Node.js on server, of course Node.js doesn't exist. I just tried to put node, command doesn't found. So what you can do is you can go ahead and grab like the most recent stable version from the apt package, like it is version probably right now 8 version, or you can grab the latest version, or you can just specify a custom version, which is we're going to be using in here. And of course for that we need to use the Node.js version manager, or the NVM, in order to install a specific or a custom Node.js version plus a custom npm version. So if we do that, first we need to go and grab apt install, and we need to install wget for actually I'm just mistaken about that, right? So we need to install apt-get in here, and of course the wget gonna allows us to remotely require a URL and download packages and stuff like that. So just kind of like an HTTPS client. So I'm gonna use wget in here. I'm gonna put q0. And of course I've got the URL from where the script needs to be installed inside of like that. So you can go and copy it from the tutorial, or you can pretty much find it on the recent tutorial on my website, ipnews.com. You're gonna find all the links and all the commands that you need to be running in there. So you don't really have to worry about that anyway. So we got the q0, and of course you need to pipe it through bash. So we need to use bash instead of sh in here. So this one is going to be going running the install.sh script, which is located inside of like GitHub user content and so on and so forth. This URL, and this is going to allows us to install NVM, of course, NVM version 3.0. So just rerun that, and it says wget is not recognized as any command. So let me just go and check out this real quick. We run it again, and there you go. So I think so nvm is perfectly working. So expands bash compilation source string already in root.bashrc. So if you try to put nvm in here, still haven't got that. Now, as clear as see, it puts some kind of a script inside of nvm directory home.nvm, and it puts it inside of course the bash rc. Now to reload the bash rc, which means we can go ahead and run the contents of bash rc, we need to use a specific command on the bash or on the shell, which is called source. So source basically allows us to like run a basic bash script or sh script. So I'm going to access the home, so this symbol means home, / I'm going to just go and run profile. So and I'm mistakenly typing everything, so I'm sorry for this, guys. I'm going to put source again, and this should be running. Now if we try to ls nvm, as curious in here, we got nvm working, and we got everything perfectly working fine here. Now to use nvm to install a specific version of Node.js, you just type in nvm, type the install command, and you give it the specific version of Node.js. In this case, I'm just going to use 11.0, just because it's perfect and it's working pretty much fine. So I'm just going to use 11.0. It tries to download the binaries in here. There you see version 11.0. It starts building it from scratch, and it sets everything. Now the default is actually 11.0. You can download and install multiple versions of this if you really need it, and you can change between the versions whenever you need it using the nvm command, of course. So it's pretty basic, pretty easy to work with, and straight to the point. Now what we can simply do in here right now is we can just go and put node. As clear as we got the node shell is working, so just type in exit. Right now if you try to type in node-v, we got the version, type in npm-v, we got the npm version. Now both they are installed, and they are completely like the latest versions using nvm and everything, and absolutely everything is working with node and npm. Now what we need to install is actually the pm2 package from the Node.js or from the npm repository. The pm2 package or the pm2 module, what it allows you to do is basically start and keep managing or keep track of your Node.js processes. And of course your Node.js process is going to be detached, which means they're going to run in the background as like vibrant process on the CPU and of course on the Linux kernel. So this allows you, this module pm2 going to allow you to keep track of that, like check the processes, do a lot of things like check the process ID, the status, you can how many times you started it, the uptime, the CPU usage, and even memory usage. Plenty of other things can be happening here or can be used with the pm2 process manager, which is pretty great, and it's been used actually on a production scale by big companies and teams for keeping like their watch or management of their Node.js instances running on Linux servers. So for that, we're just going to install it first. So just run npm install pm2, or more excitedly, we need to install it globally because we're going to be using this on a global scope. So just Control S and npm install pm2-g. It's going to run just npm, and it start installing this for us. So just going to go and wait for it a little bit. Now pm2 has been successfully installed on our machine, and to actually check it out and check if everything is working pretty much fine, just put pm2-v, check out the version. If you want to check out the status of all running processes, which we don't have any yet at the moment, we can just do status, and we get this really nice table structured, and here all of your processes, all of your Node.js instances are currently running on a detached mode are going to be in here. You can even check out logs for them. You can check out the CPU usage, how many restarts, and so on and so forth. So this one, we're going to be using this process manager version 2 for keeping track of all our processes. And in this case, we can only just be going to be running one single Node.js process, which represents our server API. And by the way, for getting this into the server API, we need to go ahead and first push it into a version control like GitHub or Bitbucket or any other platform you would like to push your application to, and then use your like Git to get it and download it and manage it. So I'm going to be using GitHub in this case because it's free, available, and of course probably the most famous Git version control platform on the planet. So everyone knows how to use it. I'm just going to put the code in there, and I'm just going to go ahead and clone it back again into the server in order to be able to work with it. Now we actually need to go to the actual code base of our application, of our server API. We grab that and we push it into some kind of like a Git version control platform. So we're obviously gonna be using GitHub because it's free. Not much of popular, and a lot of people knows how to use it. And just because it's super simple and easy, straightforward to use, work with GitHub. Plus, it provides you with private repositories up to 3 collaborators, which is pretty great from now. You can use another one like Bitbucket, Microsoft's Visual Studio, or Azure DevOps, or anything like that. So it depends on actually what you need. So the code base we've got in here is actually a Nest application, as we have talked about this before. So what I'm going to be doing is just initializing this with a GitHub repository. So I've created a GitHub repository inside of like Google's GitHub, or pretty much like the github.com, and I've created like a project and I've pushed my work on that. So just once you create a project, you can go and copy the URL for that project. So just copy that, and you can just go to your projects. You can initialize this, like do git init to initialize a bare minimum GitHub repository for your project. Then you can do like git remote add, and you can name this like, for example, origin, and you can just add the origin as this one. So it says origin exists because they already added. Now the origin, like the actual origin remote, is gonna hold this URL, so you can just gonna push your work to, and you can just simply go and do like git add to add everything to the stash judge mode. Then you can commit something like this is gonna be your initial release or anything like that. So you should already be familiar with how GitHub works and how Git version control pretty much works. So you should already be familiar with that, so and all the different things in here. Just by committing, then you simply to push up your work to the actual Git version control, just do git push, and you give it where you want to push it inside of origin and which branch you really want to push it in there. So just gonna go and use master because it's the default branch being used by the Gits. And that's it. So this is pretty much all you need to do just to push it to GitHub. And the reason behind pushing it to GitHub and not directly uploading it to a server, because it's going to be much easier to manage or to grab your code and clone it from a version control, from a Git version control, other than just like using some kind of like a tool like SCP to like from 2 computers, like a peer-to-peer, to transfer your code base. So it's going to be much more secure, much more easier, and even faster to deal with in this case. So that's why we're pushing it into GitHub and using it from there. Now this is the whole code. You should already be familiar with how the configuration works. Like you should already be familiar with your application being put in production and how you just deploy it, like with all of the database configurations and stuff like that. So all of that is going to be changed once you just go ahead and deploy it or put it in your server, because everything is going to be like in a production, not in development whatsoever. Now we can actually go ahead and clone that into our repository. So we can clone the projects that we've got on GitHub that we've just pushed to GitHub and cloning to our server to work with. So with that, I'm just going to do make dir, and I'm going to just put repos. I'm going to cd repos, and I'm simply going to clear that first. So instead of repos, I'm going to do git clone. I'm going to just put the actual URL for git clone, and it's going to be just wget API over there. So it's going to actually ask for the username to put and the password, since this is actually a private repository and not a regular public repository. Now we've got that, so we can do cd wget API. And the first thing you would like to do that is inside of it is just like look on your files. And of course, once you get into your projects, any Node.js application, whatever framework you're pretty much using, Nest.js, Sails, Normal Express, or Standard Express server, you pretty much need to first run the npm install command. So I'm going to do npm install and wait for the installation to complete, actually to install all the dependencies, and only production ready dependencies are going to be just like installed for that. It's not developer dependencies whatsoever, because we are actually inside of our production environments. And at some point, if you try to install your dependencies and you got this like permission denied error, so actually because Node.js has some kind of a permissions issues inside of Ubuntu, and it can't actually access the root like the root folders and try to make them, especially for installing global dependencies and like modifying the bins and stuff. So to fix this one, all you need to do is just gonna do like npm config and set user 0. So here we change the user to user 0, which is the root user. And after changing that, the next thing we need to do is actually change the configuration again, set in save parameter to true. So the save parameter is going to allow you to run inside of the environment without having permissions and stuff. So it's going to be granted for sure. So we can clear that again. We can do run npm install right again. So I just wanted to show you that if you got any issue like this or something, you can easily go ahead and fix it. If you don't, then that's already good. Now, after it has been successfully installed, clearly see the error has been fixed and all of the dependencies are installed successfully. So we can just go and skip that, and if you take a look, there's the new folder created for us, Node modules. So everything looks pretty great and everything should be working pretty much fine. Now we got our application, just need to make sure first that the actual server, or pretty much the MySQL daemon server, is actually running and it's not stopped or it hasn't any issues or something, in order to be able to start a server and link it with the database, of course. So for that, we can just go and do system control. So you always, when you try to actually take a look on your system and checking any like servers, if it is currently running, if it is bootable or something, you need to use the system control command. So system control, I'm going to use status, and I'm going to be putting MySQL. As clearly see, the status is actually running since like 2 days ago. So since like we started, so pretty much it shows you a lot of informations which are pretty useful. Now we can go ahead and use PM2 to start the process. I'm going to just put PM2, and for PM2 to start, if you take a look on like say start, and you take a look on the help and the available commands. So start, you can start in a watch mode and a daemon mode, so container in debug purposes. So you can even use Docker for this one, use it as a container with Docker, or you can watch the folder for like a specific changes. If it happens, it's just gonna restart the application over and over again over these changes. So all simply I'm gonna do is just do PM2, and we need to like first, if you take a look in here, we got everything in here. We got the SRC and stuff, but for every single framework has its own way to deal with things. So for Nest.js, for example, the same thing that we're using here, you first gotta go ahead and like build the project into JavaScript ready files. Then everything's gonna be inside of the distribution folder. From there, we can just go ahead and grab the file and we can run it. So the same for this one. If you're running like on normal JavaScripts, like on Express or something, you can just go ahead and run your app.javascript, the main entry point file, and you can just start it. But in this case, we're using Nest.js, which by the way uses TypeScript. So we need to just go ahead and compile TypeScript code into JavaScript code for like the distribution purposes. So for compilation processes, you can take a look on, for example, in here we've got, so the pack.json is clear, so you can start developments or you can start a production. But the simple thing we need to go and do, like using the build. So we just need to run the build script. So we're going to do npm run build, and it should actually start the building process for us, where it pretty much builds all the configurations. It takes care of like TypeScript transpiling into JavaScript code and so on and so forth. So all of that is going to be done by the way in this. So you can take a look on Nest.js if you're really interested into. It's a pretty great framework. I've also got tutorials about Nest.js if you're really interested in taking a look on this great framework. Now it has been built successfully. Take a look ls, and you're gonna find like distribution folder. You can even do like ls this, and it gets everything in there, like all of them are JavaScript. So you just need to go ahead inside of that and run the main.javascript, which is the main entry point for the application where all of the other modules are linked to. So simple enough. Or now we can just do like PM2, we can do start, we can go inside of like distribution folder, so we're going to do this, and we can just simply run main.js. So starting off that, clearly seen here, it shows you this table, which shows the information. So the mode actually fork, so it forks the process. The ID is 0, the name is actually main. You can rename this, but just like leave it for that because we only got one single process. And the CPU usage actually is 0%. Memory usage about 17.04. If you constantly want to check out the status, you can just go and do like PM2 status, and it shows you constantly the status. And clearly see the memory is getting higher and higher, so it pretty much works pretty much fine, and everything for the fork and stuff like that. We need to go into the Nginx, and we need to edit some configurations for that. So we can just going to do like cd etc, and for etc you can just going to do cd Nginx. For Nginx, well, what we can do pretty much in here is go inside of sites available and edit the configurations. We're going to do nano sites available and / server name.com. So this is actually the configuration. Now we need to edit the configuration to make it look much more identical. And what I've got for this configuration, so the server name is going to be actually the same thing. So we got the server IP address. Here we don't need the index whatsoever because we are going to be using a reverse proxy, and this configuration is not for reverse proxy. We don't need a root folder whatsoever, and yeah, that's basically it. We don't need to listen for that. Again, just inside it's optional. So just need to set the server name. Here basically you need to set it for your domain name, but for now we don't have a domain name, so just gonna set it for the same IP address as our server. And well, here for the actual location, we've got a couple of things to be added for a reverse proxy. So those things, just gonna copy paste them because that's exactly what it needs to be done in here. So just like, well, need to put it like the same way in here. So if you can just gonna copy paste it, you can take a look on the written tutorial on my website where you're gonna find all of the code, all of the configurations, so you can just clearly go and copy paste it, or you can retype it. It's not a really big deal of that, but yeah, that's the main point. So here we're just gonna set proxy header. We set like X real IP address. So we're gonna just set a header to the new request that's gonna be sent to our locally running server, and it's gonna just be like the header X real IP address. So you're gonna send the remote address, which is a variable, by the way, on Nginx side. So it's actually a global variable by default available on Nginx environments. We've got proxy add X forwarded. That's we add another header. We added a header for the host and a header for the Nginx proxy. So we are actually currently using Nginx proxy. The proxy pass in here actually shows where you want to pass in the proxy, like where you want to send or forward the request, and reverse proxy it. So for that, we need to change this, and the port is going to be just 3000 instead of the local host. And again, this is actually going to be 3000 again. So we can also access HTTPS server name, or just by accessing HTTP server name. So we don't have HTTPS whatsoever. So I'm just going to leave it HTTP, both HTTP in here, and it should work as charming as it is. So just changing this IP addresses with the same as your locally running server, your locally running Nodejs server, and here you just put your like the same thing in here because it's actually a variable which represents the same thing as this variable, and everything should be working pretty much fine with Nginx reverse proxy. So Control X for exit, press yes or press Y and save it as the same name in here just to keep the changes, and everything should be looking pretty much fine right now. Now the last thing we need to do is go ahead and restart Nginx, because once you do any changes whatsoever to the configuration of Nginx, you need to go ahead and restart it whatsoever, because if you don't, Nginx won't take these configuration changes whatsoever. So that's basically what we need to do. I'm going to just call system control, and I'm going to just restart Nginx, and the control path is exceeded with error, and it should, if we take a look on nginx-t, which checks the configuration, so nginx.conf test failed has actually an error, so expected closing point in that. So we can go and do nanosize.com. So we basically got an issue for that, and clearly see it's missing a semicolon, so we can just put that in here. So you always need to make sure your actually configurations are working before restarting the server or restarting Nginx. So to make sure that configuration is working, just do nginx-t for testing, and let's clearly see testing successful, syntax is okay. Now we can just go into system control and restart Nginx. Again, now Nginx is restarted. You can do system control status Nginx, and it's clear to see Nginx shows up as it is actually running. Pretty great. Now we can just get rid of that, and if you take a look or go into our IP address, So we go to the browser. We'll got the server management in here. Now, if you actually try to go into the IP address of our website, or pretty much our web server, and in your case you might have like a domain name, so we just take this IP address and we try to access. Here you see we get status code 404, which comes from the Nest.js framework, which means it's actually being redirected. So the request is reverse proxied through Nginx into our Nodejs server that is running internally in the background. So pretty much pretty basic, pretty cool. As you can see, Nginx reverse proxy is being showed up in here. So we just like a URL in here, like we go to sort of test and like main, we get, or not actually main, it's actually first. We'll come to the VTN API, which is something that we have coded in here. Inside of the controller, clearly see returns welcome to VTN API. Once we go inside of test and / first. So it's basically working pretty much fine. And as clearly see, the server is being reverse proxied. The packets are sent and received successfully. As clearly seen here, Node.js is running, Express is running. So we got everything pretty much running perfectly fine with the Nginx reverse proxy. So that's basically actually, guys, how you set up a server. As clearly see, it's pretty basic. It has like a lot of things to be done, and you can do it like in many ways. So you can use Apache, you can use another process manager, so on and so forth. But that's basically how I see is the most efficient way, with like a stack full of great technologies and really cool tools that you can help you throughout your way for maintaining the server and keeping it up to date and fixing bugs and checking logs and all of different things. And PM2 Process Manager is a pretty great actually place to manage all of your Node.js processes, your server APIs. You can even have like manage multiple servers running on the same VPS throughout your PM2 Process Manager basically. So that's basically actually, guys, how you can go in and use and how you can deploy a Node.js application from scratch into a VPS or a bare minimum VPS server running on the cloud until you get in your first web page displayed up on the web server. So thanks for watching. I really do hope you guys have enjoyed the video tutorial. As always, if you have got that, so you can just put that like button. If you really want more like video tutorials like this for just doing hands-on and putting on servers and stuff, that would be really great. I'd be very helpful if you got that. This video though is actually sponsored by Nginx, so thank you for providing us with a VPS server for the actual tutorial, so we can demonstrate things how it gets done behind the scenes. So you can more want to just go and check out Nginx for their affordable hosting and their fastest servers. As you see, the VPS we've been using throughout the whole tutorial has been really great, like super fast and super reliable. So I'm really advising guys to go in and check it out and give it a try. So yeah, that would be really great. So thanks for watching this setup again. I really hope you guys have enjoyed that. Push that like button, subscribe, and I will see you all hopefully in the next video tutorial.